Hi and welcome to this video, and a big thanks to Pinned on Places for recommending this place, and there is a good reason why. Tucked into the rural landscape of Herefordshire near the Welsh borders, the Church of St Mary and St David of Kilpeck stands as one of the best preserved examples of Norman architecture in Britain. Built around 1140, although likely to have replaced a much earlier Saxon church at the same site. This modest village church has earned international acclaim for its extraordinary Romanesque sculpture and unbroken continuity as a sacred site. Kilpeck Church embodies the influence of art, religion, myth and community that defined the medieval world and continues to inspire wonder today. Around the exterior of the church runs a sequence of more than 70 corbels, while the south door represents one of the finest Romanesque portals in England. These carvings do not simply repeat conventional Christian motifs, but instead weave together biblical symbolism, local folklore, and imagery with roots in pre-Christian traditions. The south doorway offers another highlight of Kilpeck's sculptural programme. Here, the stonemasons lavished their greatest artistry. The arch, composed of multiple orders, richly decorated with patterns, spirals, foliage, and a striking sequence of beakheads, grotesque heads that grasp the arch as it's biting into the stone. These strange creatures, with their gaping jaws and bulging eyes, at once repel and fascinating. They serve as a threshold guardians, keeping out evil and sin while reminding the worshippers of the dangers of straying from the faith. Above them, carved captions depict intertwined beasts, serpents, and foliage scrolls, linking Christian imagery to the Garden of Eden, with older traditions of the world tree and sacred groves. The craftsmanship is superb, the cuts sharp, the forms deeply undercut to catch the light, the figures expressive and alive. In comparison to many other Romanesque portals in Britain, the Kilpeck doorway is unmatched in its refinement. For many years the south door was hidden by a wooden porch, but this was removed in 1868 to allow visitors to see the carvings as originally intended. Although this has left the doorway exposed to the elements, the sandstone is robust and its condition is carefully monitored. In 1968, a narrow, protruding strip of lead was let into the mortar above the arch to protect the carvings from water running down the wall above. The corbels are perhaps the most celebrated feature of the church. Each corbel carries a unique design for forming a sculptural gallery that wraps around the church. One shows the famous sheela, a grotesque female figure exposing her genitalia. While such images likely derived from pre-Christian fertility and protective figures, their replacement on churches allowed them to be reinterpreted as warning against lust and bodily sin. Elsewhere, we see grotesques, beasts devouring one another, serpents knotted in battle. Some of these are drawn from biblical symbolism, the serpent as temptation, the dragon as the devil, while others echo folk creatures of chaos and protection. It is important to remember that these carvings were made in a time when the vast majority of people could neither read nor write. The Bible and the teaching of the church were inaccessible in writing form to the ordinary villagers, who instead learned through story, sermon, ritual, and above all, image. Sculptures such as those at Kilpeck functioned as a visual sight. They taught moral lessons, warning against sin, reminded viewers of mortality, and reassured them of the protection offered by the church. The sheela may have shocked, but she also cautioned against vice. The green man may delight, while also confirming divine creation. The beast horrified, but underscored the dangers of temptation and hearsay. The doorway itself acted as a threshold sermon, impressing upon those entering the church that they pass from dangerous, chaotic world into a sacred, ordered space. The stonemasons of Kilpeck deserve recognition as artists of the highest calibre. Their work was not crude folk carving, but the product of mastery, vision, and a deep sensitivity to stone. The corbels are various and lively, each distinct in character, ranging from the playful to the terrifying. The doorway shows remarkable handling, complex Romanesque patterns, intertwined symbolic figures seamlessly into rich ornamental schemes. These craftsmen transformed local sandstone into a lasting visual language that speaks across centuries. Their artistry demonstrates not only technical skills but also cultural intelligence. They knew how to take motifs from folklore, pagan belief and biblical traditions and turn them into a programme that could speak to both peasants and priests, to those that could read and to those who could not. Kilpeck, therefore, stands as far more than a charming parish church. It is a masterpiece of medieval imagination, where Christian doctrine and local folklore were not seen as mutually exclusive, but interwoven into a single fabric. Its corbels and doorway carvings are at once moral lessons, protective guardians, and echoes of older traditions that would not easily be erased. Today they remain among the most enigmatic and compelling survivals of Romanesque sculptures in Britain, testimony to the vision and skills of the stonemasons who, in carving them, left a legacy that endures as both sacred art and cultural memory. The brilliance of these carving owes much to the extraordinary stonemasons of the Herefordshire school, the workshop responsible for Kilpeck and a series of other churches in the Welsh masters during the early 12th century. This group of mid-12th century sculptors, whose exact origins remain debated, were active across Herefordshire, Gloucestershire and Monmouthshire, producing a distinctive body of Romanesque sculptures. They were likely trained by craftsmen who had worked at sites in France or Spain. Their work shows both international influence and local imagination. The inside of the church continues to surprise. The chancel arch is also adorned with sculptures, while the asp vault remains its original stone construction. A medieval font rests on 4 columns, and there is a holy water stoup that would have been located outside the church. It is much older than the church and believed to come from the chapel in the nearby forest of Treville. It is much older than the church and possibly even pre-Saxon. It looks like hands clutching a pregnant belly. These features, preserved through centuries of religious upheaval, make Kilpeck one of the rare churches where one can feel a direct connection with the spiritual imagination of the 12th century. This church survival is something of a miracle in itself. While many other churches lost their ornamentation to Reformation or Victorian over Restoration, Kilpeck was spared. It owes its preservation to its relative isolation, careful 19th century conservation, and a community that has valued its unique heritage. It's amazing how well this church has stood, almost untouched. It's a shame that its neighbouring building was not so lucky. It is said that in the Domesday Book of 1086 that the land here was given by William the Conqueror to William Fitznorman, who some believe was William the Conqueror's knight. According to the Domesday Survey, Kilpeck had 3 ploughs, 2 serfs, which were a servant or labourer who was treated as part of the land, and 4 oxen, men who tends or drives oxen, and there were 57 men with 19 ploughs. Close to where the church now stands, William Fitznorman, around 1090, built a Norman Motte and Bailey castle. The first castle was built from wood. By around 1127, William's son, Hugh Fitzwilliam, succeeded him, sometimes styled as the fosterer of Kilpeck. Hugh is an early figure who transitioned the family name from Fitznorman to Kilpeck, reflecting their seat at the Kilpeck Castle. In 1134, the castle is mentioned when Hugh Kilpeck gave its revenue to the newly founded priory south east of the church. The priory was a site of a small cell of the Benedictine Abbey of Gloucester, founded in the 12th century. Hugh also gave the nearby church of St David and the chapel of St Mary within the castle grounds to the Abbey of Gloucester. Hugh was probably responsible for the building of the church here and for the rebuilding of the castle some time before he died in 1169. The medieval village of Kilpeck extended eastwards to the far side of the church, an area now just farmland, though faint ridges and hollows show where some of the buildings once stood. Kilpeck Castle, despite its history, which included King John being entertained at the castle around 1214, it became a ruin gradually after it lost its military importance following the conquest of Wales in the late 13th century. No longer needed as a frontier fortress, it was left without proper maintenance, and by the 15th century it had been abandoned as a residence or garrison. Over time, local people dismantled parts of the structure to reuse its stone for nearby buildings, while the exposed remains suffered from weathering and natural decay. As a result, only earthworks, fragments of the keep, and sections of the curtain wall survive today, leaving Kilpeck Castle as a picturesque ruin besides its well-preserved Norman church. Together, they paint a picture of a once thriving medieval settlement centred around faith, governance and agricultural life. Kilpeck is not just a beautiful village to visit, but to walk through Kilpeck is to step into a layered past, layers of interesting history and more than I have covered here. I'll put a link in the description that gives a timeline of the history of this beautiful place. That brings us to the end of our journey through Kilpeck Church and the Castle, a place where history, art and mystery all come together. If you enjoyed exploring with me today, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below to share your thoughts or your own experiences of Kilpeck. And if you'd like to go one step further in supporting the channel, consider becoming a member. It really helps me keep making content like this for you. Thanks for watching, and until the next time, stay safe.